Hi everybody, my name is Jesse Kramer and I'm the Director of Exhibits for Conner Prairie. We asked you to give us some of your questions about the Conner Prairie collection, and we're here to answer some of those today for Conner Prairie at Home. So the first question comes from Leslie, who asks, what is your oldest object in the collection, and also asks what's the most valuable object in the collection. Well, Leslie, to start off, I'm not allowed to tell you what our most valuable collection object is. That's something that's against our collections policy, unfortunately, and also is part of standard museum practices throughout the country, throughout the nation and throughout the world. It's something that we have to do to make sure that we are protecting our collection and making sure that we're keeping everything as secure as possible. So unfortunately, I can't divulge that information. However, I can talk to you about what the oldest objects in our collection are. So first off, let's talk about some of the projectile points that we have. Projectile points are what a lot of people would know as arrowheads. They were created by the indigenous peoples that lived in the areas that we now refer to as Fishers and Noblesville, the geographic areas that are now Fishers and Noblesville. The oldest projectile point that we have in our collection dates somewhere around 9,000 to 8,000 BCE. It was donated by Frank Straithoff in 1971. And again, like I said, we've got about 299 of these, so quite a few that are in the collection, and they are definitely what I would say qualifies as our oldest object. Another piece that we have is the sweet gum. So a gum would have been used for storing grain. This is a tree that grows hollow typically, and the one that we have is a grayish white sycamore grain gum. This gum was taken from about the middle of the tree, and it's got a circumference of around 19 feet. So that gives you an idea, that being the middle of the tree, how large it would have been at the bottom. I mean, we're talking a 38-foot circumference. So that speaks to some of the really large old-growth forests that we used to have in this area. Now, this particular gum, we don't know the age of the tree, but we do know that this grain gum was used somewhere between 1800 and 1860. For our next question, we have a question from Emily. Emily asks, what is your favorite oxen yoke in the collection, and do any of them have any cool stories? We have multiple yokes in the collection, not all of them oxen yokes, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the yokes that we've got. We found two yokes that were donated by the same donor who gave us what we now call the Barker Cabin. Many of you might know where the Barker Cabin is. It is located pretty much directly across from our pottery shop in Prairie Town, and it's named for the Barker family. The Barker family is a group of characters that we portray in Prairie Town, and that's basically where it gets that name from. The name of the family that donated the cabin, though, is Fuqua. And the Fuqua yoke and Fuqua animal yoke, both of them were donated by the family. The first one, the animal yoke, dates from about 1800 to 1860. And the other yoke was made for people. It was made in the 1990s and was also donated by the Fuqua family. We do have a yoke that was specific to oxen. That dates to about 1910. It was purchased from an antique shop in 1972. There's also an animal yoke that was donated by Eli Lilly in 1971, which we don't have a known date range for. And then lastly, we have an animal yoke that was donated by Purdue University in 1969. The 1969 Purdue yoke, what's interesting about that is it was something that was used to keep cows from jumping over fences. And this one dates to about 1890. For our third question, Kim asks, what item from your collection surprises you the most, either because of its uniqueness or its strangeness? I would have to say that it's our passenger pigeon. We have a passenger pigeon taxidermied in the collection, and this is interesting because this species went extinct in 1914, and the last passenger pigeon in the world, Martha, was at the Cincinnati Zoo and was taxidermied shortly after she died. Conner Prairie's passenger pigeon went off-site for repair in 2013 at the recommendation of the staff at the State Museum and the Indianapolis Children's Museum. It was noted by the conservator that our passenger pigeon was in fantastic shape. They noted that many of them that came in their experience, had soot damage, were of a much darker color, whereas ours is really close to the original color of the bird. So that's a unique piece about it in and of itself. While we don't have an exact date on when our pigeon was taxidermied, I can say that it definitely predates 1914, since that is the extinction date. So, Kim, that's one of the pieces that I personally find really, really cool in our collection. I was so excited to see that. Having grown up in Cincinnati and being familiar with the story of Martha, it was just really neat to be able to see that there in our vault. And if you ever get down to Cincinnati, you can check out a mural downtown that shows off. It's basically a mural that's dedicated to Martha. Really, really interesting. I want to thank you all for joining me today and letting me tell you a little bit more about our collection. I have to say that we are living in a really unique time right now, and I know there's a lot that is disconcerting and somewhat frightening about the time that we're living in, but I do want to remind everyone that this is a moment in history, and a lot of times we forget that we are living in history every day. And so some of the things that you might think about as this goes on, these are the sorts of things, what you're doing right now, what you're writing on Facebook, what you're tweeting, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, these thoughts that you're recording are something that future historians are going to look at. So while this is a frightening time, it is something that is worth noting that this is a moment that will be remembered. And what are you holding on to? Are you holding on to newspapers? Are there clippings that you're keeping track of? Are there things that you're doing to help preserve this history? Because this is a major moment for our country and for the world, and this will be studied for years and years to come. So while it doesn't offer a lot of solace for the situation we're in, it is something to think about. We are living history right now, and this is why history matters. This is why history is important, because we can learn from the past. So I hope that you are making the best of this situation like I'm trying to do, and I wish you and your family and your friends and your loved ones well. We will get through this.